God bless everybody today. It's February 7th of 2021. We're going to talk about some lunar eclipses and blood moon events that are going to affect us in the next 3 to 4 years in this video. You can always find all my articles on my eschatology page at my End of Days Survival at endofdayssurvival.com. It's got all my graphs, charts, timelines, flow charts, videos, everything's out here to check out. I'm constantly updating. I've added new PDFs so that you can update your files and you can see these files closer and actually be able to read the files a lot easier. So check that out. But today we're going to go into what I call the next 3 years, where we're going to see a lot of eclipses, blood moons, and other events that are going to affect the timelines that I've been talking to you about already. And in reality, since 2017, August 21st of 2017, we started being affected by these total lunar eclipses or blood moons or partial eclipses over the United States. I believe they're going to impact us. And the first one that we need to look at was this total solar eclipse of August 21st of 2017. So this eclipse on August 21st of 2017 was a total eclipse, and it was visible from coast to coast across the United States. And this hasn't happened or occurred in 99 years. So this was an extremely rare coast-to-coast total solar eclipse, and it was visible from most of the globe, but in general this was an event that happened directly over the United States. And so I believe that was extremely important, that this was the sign that we were going to start into a new set of events that are going to start to occur on this planet. And as we start to see Erdogan march into Syria in 2019, and from this date to 2024, which these blood moons are going to radiate through, you'll notice there's a 7-year gap between 2017 and 2024 as we start to talk through this stuff. So on this graph, you can see we had this total solar eclipse across the whole United States on August 21st of 2017. This was considered the Great American Eclipse. It hasn't happened in 99 years. And then just a few years after that, we had what they call an annual solar eclipse of June 10th of 2021. And so why do I believe the June 10th of 2021 solar eclipse is important? Well, I believe that it's the sign that will then start the 2300 days that I've talked about in Daniel 8 or Daniel 12, which state that there's 22,300 evenings and mornings from the time the sanctuary is cleansed. The seventh bowl is being poured down. The earth is cleansed at this point. If you work 2,300 days back, that takes us to June 30th of 2021. So why is that important on this chart? Because I believe it's a sign that certain things are going to start to occur in this country. As you can see, these things are crossing over the top of each other for a reason. And they're all crossing over the United States, which possibly could show judgment against the United States. I talked about a double judgment. There's 2 crosses here. Maybe there's a reason for that. But if you go to this June 10th of 2021 and you go to my chart, you'll realize that certain events are starting to happen right after that. So if you go into my chart and you start to look at this June 30th, now remember that date for the solar eclipse is on June 10th. So we're starting to get into that 2,300 days of Daniel. I've talked about this Daniel 8 ram-goat war between the Kurds or the Medes and Iran and Persia. These 2 groups will join, Iran and the Medes, or align in some fashion, as Daniel 8:1-10 tell us. And then shortly after that, as they get pushed down between Baghdad and Shush, Iran, the Kurds, I'm talking about getting pushed down there, that Turkey will go over and crush them by the end of this year. That's 2021. And that would then start a chain of events that would then take 10 nations of radical Islam's led through Erdogan into Egypt and then back into Israel, and then we would see their destruction in the end of 2023, as I've shown you here on this chart many times. I think it's extremely important that June 10th date sort of ushers in the start of this 2300 days, and that as we move forward, we're going to see some other really interesting dates that occur on this chart. So a lot of people are talking about how these solar eclipses, lunar eclipses, full eclipses actually cross, and how they're crossing over the United States, and how this might mark some type of judgment. I indicated on the one video, the double portion video, that I believe that since Trump had broken the treaty at the beginning of 2020 with Israel, he'd split the land, that this was a potential judgment against our country and our nation due to this, because you do not divide the land of Israel. And the second was on June 30th, right before that huge astrological conjunction over the 4th, that's 6 to 7 planetary astrological conjunction that we had over the 4th of July, blood moon event directly over this country, that would affect us here. And so when we start to see these things occur, you have to start to ask, why over this country, and how is that going to affect us as we move forward? Well, you can start to see then that once the June 10th solar eclipse happens, and we start to move into those 2300 days of Daniel, that the next one that will occur that matters is this solar eclipse of October 14th of 2023. And I think this is important, how these are lining up with my chart, and I think it matters. And so let's go look at that chart again on this October 14th of 2023 date. So if you go into the chart and you look at where that October 14th date lines up in here, okay? I've said through that paradigm that if you look at the dates that I've given you on those videos, that there's a date stamp of October 10th of 2023. And that shortly after this October 10th of 2023 date, when Erdogan is besieging Jerusalem, as it states in Jeremiah 31 or 39:1 and 52:4 and Ezekiel 24:1, all these state the same thing, that on the 10th month of the 10th day of this specific year of this king, that these things would happen. I went through that in a video. I'm not going to do that here. But if that's the case, I believe that October 14th date is extremely important, because we have just started to see Jerusalem under siege, and that they are not broken into the city, but that they will start to attack the city for up to 2 years at this point. So on October 10th of 2023, we're going to see that potential siege of Israel, okay, in Jerusalem. Now, they haven't broken into the walls, and this won't occur for 2 years, as it states later in that paradigm. But it's interesting that just shortly after that, on October 14th of 2023, we have this additional eclipse that crosses over this next solar eclipse that is total. It's a total solar eclipse on April 24th of 2023. And so if we go back and look at that chart, set those dates in mind, October 14th of 2023 and April 8th of 2024. So if you go back to my chart, you realize that October 14th, 2023 is just after Erdogan starts to besiege the city, Jerusalem and Israel, that if you move that to that April 24th date, what do we see? That signing of that covenant of death with the nations. And so I think that's extremely important as we start to see these dates start to pop up, that these blood moons, the eclipses, the partial eclipses, all these things matter to what is coming. And he told us to look at the signs and seasons to be able to see what is coming. I think it's extremely important how these dates cross over the United States, how between these two total solar eclipses there's a 7-year gap. God likes sevens. How I believe this lines up with our calendar that I've been presenting for a while, and how these events are going to happen. But look at that April 8, 2024 date. Okay, and if you go to my chart, I start to show you how Antichrist has risen here. And then he takes those continual burnt offerings away 30 days prior to the signing of the treaty, that 7-year treaty. And then April 8th would be that conjunction of those two total eclipses. And then we see the signing of that treaty potentially on April 20th of 2024. How this stuff sort of lines up is pretty insane in general. So I just mainly wanted to point these things out. I do believe that June 10th, 2021 eclipse matters as we start to move into those 2300 days. I believe that this 2017 total eclipse that we're going to see cross over this 2024 date matters, because this is a 7-year period before we start to see the presentation of Antichrist at the beginning of 2024, right after his destruction in 2023. And that this matters to the chart that I've been talking to you about for a while now. That if you look at how Erdogan has invaded on all these Jewish calendar dates seem to add up and matter on these charts. And so when you start to look at this and you start to plug these dates in, we're going to start to see a lot of things happen between now and April of 2024. And that's why I keep saying, look at these blood moon calendars. Look at these blood moon dates. Look at where they're lining up. Look at the solar eclipses. There's so much out here to look at. There's so much out here it's hard to keep up with. And to present it to you so you can see all these different things. It's important. Get your oil in your lamp, please. We're getting short on time here. No one's talking about this. I'm screaming out here right now. I feel like I'm Jeremiah and no one's listening to me. I presented this to I don't know how many people out here, and they just don't want to talk about it. So I'm going to keep talking about it because I don't think anybody else is seeing this stuff. They're all asking, whoa, where are we on the timeline? Where are we on the timeline? I don't know how many times I've heard this. Where are we on the timeline? But yet, when somebody tries to present an argument to where we are on the timeline, they shut you off. So we're not a very open-minded society in this biblical community, and when we try to present information to people, they don't really want to listen, and there's probably a reason for that, because there's so much false information out here. So where do you find the truth? That's what we're really looking for here, is who has the truth. And I don't know whether I do or not. I'm just stating, as you look at these things and how they line up with each other, can we discern where we are in time? I truly believe we can. I've said for a while that the Lord comes back on the Feast of Trumps in 2027. And that if you work those timelines back, those 2300 days, that puts you into June 30th. And so June 30 was always my starting marker to where we were going to start into these 2300 days of this ram-goat war that's going to culminate into a war between the Kurds joining with Iran, and then seeing the destruction of those two nations by Turkey by the end of this year. Will that happen? I don't know. The paradigm that I've also brought between the three modern kings also indicates that Netanyahu has to be elected in March 23rd of this year. So unless these things happen, then I'm just wrong. But if they do happen, then maybe we're starting to see the picture. And I don't see this getting any better. As things break down, we're going to have a massive falling away from the church as we start to see this country break down under a Biden presidency. I don't see this changing. I talked about that judgment over the United States on the 4th of July for a reason. And I believe now we're starting to see that precipitate in front of us. So we'll see how all that turns out. God bless everybody. Find the very small open door. That door named Jesus. He's the only way to heaven. He's the only way to the Creator. He's the only way to the end of this madness, the story. To get to heaven, you have to go through the Son. That's what we've been trying to get the Jews to understand for a lot of years, is they have to find the Son for them to get to heaven, and they've fallen away from Him, and that's why we've taken up this challenge to try to bring the church and the Christians and the Jews back to the Son. So God bless everybody. Be safe out there. Things are not going to get better. Put some oil in your lamp. Get ready. The next 6.5, 7 years is going to be extremely, incredibly insane. So God bless everybody. Have a great day.